So with this, we will
Thank you
move towards
so much.
another section. She is from an industry which is growing, robotics, in the medical sciences, where we have robotic surgeries, robotic machines. So Dr. Ruchi Dana is a medical robotic surgeon. She's an entrepreneur, and she got the Forbes Power Businesswoman Award and Next Generation Leader 2017 and 2019. We are very much honored to have you on board. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, Doctor, would you like to introduce yourself? I give you just a formal introduction, but people would like to know about your robotics, and what's new about it, and of course for you, and what is your success story, how you develop yourselves in a business leader. Please go ahead.
Sure, thank you so much. So, I'm Dr. Ruchi Dana. I'm a medical doctor and a Stanford MBA. So I was born and raised in the Middle East. I was born in Libya. And then when the Libyan sanctions happened, our family moved to Dubai. So I did part of my schooling from Libya, part of it from Dubai. And for my medical college, I went to India. And then during my medical college days, I was working a lot on low-cost medical devices. I was really fond of innovating and working on new devices on my own. I was the first student of my university to get travel grants to go abroad and present papers, publish papers. I was really excited because it's usually the professors who get these grants to go abroad and present papers. And I really wanted to commercialize these devices. But what happened was that when I came back to India and I wanted to start my own company, I realized there was not enough people to support and guide. And that was back in 2007 and 2008. So even the startup ecosystem in India hadn't developed very well, especially in medical colleges. Even the best of professors didn't really understand the language of business. So it's a very high risk thing to actually leave the clinical profession and go and start a company and become an entrepreneur. So I decided to go for an MBA. I applied to various business schools. I got through into almost all of them. I got a full scholarship from MIT. But when the Stanford results came, I immediately chose Stanford, mainly because of the focus on entrepreneurship. And also Stanford has a Stanford Biodesign program. So what happens there is that it's at the intersection of various disciplines. So you have doctors, engineers, lawyers, PhD students, MBA students, everybody comes together to solve for unmet clinical needs. So that was really exciting. So one of the best things about this program is that the kind of solutions that come out of it are really affordable. And they are applicable to the majority of the developing countries as well. So my team actually won the NIH grant from the US government. I led a trip to China, and we worked on a lot of unmet clinical needs. And we worked on some ENT instruments as well. So that was really exciting. And since then, I've been involved in medical devices all through my life. I'm currently working on a low-cost robotic surgery platform. It's for it's developing intelligent, agile, and affordable robots, mainly for the knee replacement surgeries, which is a very common surgery these days, and shoulder replacement surgeries, hip replacement surgeries. I would definitely love to talk about it, but I think today's topic is much more relevant for women. And I would like to, and since it's the month of October, I would like to focus a little bit more on women's health and how it's so important to focus on your own health. Recently, I was going through a documentary by BBC which said that around 17,000 women die each year in Pakistan because of breast cancer. And the real results is maybe more than 40,000. It's just in the documentary, the reported figure was 17,000. So if you go down to the deep cause of this death of women by breast cancer in Pakistan or in India or in the developing countries, one of the main reasons for this is it's almost like a taboo subject to talk about breast cancer and talk about these things, especially if it's a young female and she feels a lump in her breast. It's very difficult for her to convey the message to her family. And because it's not a very open culture, and they find it very, very difficult to think about even speaking to their immediate family members about this. And once the family members come to know, maybe the mother comes to know, she hides it further from the other family members. So it's a very, very difficult situation in which these women find themselves in. And what happens is the more delay they come across in terms of going to get medical help, the more advanced the cancer becomes. So what happens is almost maybe more than 80% of the cases are just ignored, and they reach like a late stage, and that's what causes like a lot of burden on the healthcare system. So a lot of grief to the families, a lot of hardship to the families as well. But it's all about like the culture, about how you make the culture much more open, and how you make the people much more aware about their own health. So in this month of October, I'm actually supporting one NGO which is actually doing breast cancer screening in the remotest villages of India. And how they're able to do it is because of a new advancement in technology. They're using AI to actually screen the woman in the villages itself. Because what happens is, like, once a woman comes to feel a lump and she wants to go for a mammography, what happens is, like, she would have to leave her kids behind and go to the city and get a mammogram done, and there's a huge waiting line, and she might have to stay in a hotel, and all of these things are problems that people come across. And especially in villages, it's really difficult to leave your kids behind, your entire family behind, and go to the city for an entire day or a couple of days and all of that. So what this startup is doing, I'll just share my screen. So that's the kind of papers and all that I worked on, the Stanford Biodesign program, how I went to China for the trip, and then I've got some good recognition and all. But I like to focus mainly on how frugal innovation is so important, because, like, if you can talk about all of the advancements in technology like robotics, AI and all of that, but like if it's not for the benefit of the developing world, or if it's not for the benefit of the people on the ground, then what's it of use, right? Like, you can just play with these things in the lab, but like if it's not for use for the entire like customers, like your patients or the doctors in the villages and all that, it's really of not much use. So this particular company is basically using AI for detection of breast cancer at a very low cost. How do they do it? They're using a normal laptop, and they have a camera. It's a thermal mammogram, with the help of which, like, they can set up these like mobile units even in the mobile vans that go to the villages, or they can set it up in a small room in a village and just put the curtains and all, and it's a very private scenario. So like people feel comfortable in getting their checkups done. And with the help of this, you can actually screen women in the villages themselves. So you don't need the woman to go to the city and get their checkup done and leave their kids behind. And then, like, there's also a lot of taboo about this subject. So I think these are the kind of innovations that we should all support. This is a very low cost solution. Similarly, there are many other low cost solutions like this, which can actually help in like changing the entire scenario of how like healthcare happens in these countries. Because, like, if you talk about developing countries, you can talk about like the best of solutions, but if they're not able to reach to the end population, then it doesn't really make sense of like doing this entire work in a clinic. Because what happens is, like, there was a recent study about how Google was using AI to actually diagnose diabetic retinopathy and all, and it was working perfectly. But when it came to a clinical situation, it didn't really work, because like the situation in the clinics is completely different than what happens in the lab. Because in the lab, you're working with perfect pictures, perfect images and all of that, and you can really do something. But if when you come to the clinics and you rely on like the nurses or like the compounders and all to take the images would never be the best of quality, right? So the AI would fail in such situations. So it's really important for us to understand the scenario. And also, if there are some audience like who come from corporates and all, it's really important for corporates and governments to support such projects. Because like even if we have like young entrepreneurs who want to solve this situation, it's really important for those young entrepreneurs to cooperate with the corporations or the government or hospitals and all to make their startups a success. Because like you can dream about things and dream about solutions, but if it's not being like replicated in the real world scenario, then these things don't really actually work. Because like the clinical way how these images work is completely different than what happens in the lab. So I'd request like all the corporates that are there looking at this slide, please try to understand that like there are so many dreams that these young entrepreneurs have, when it's really important to have like them pilot in the corporates, have pilot projects with the hospitals, with the governments for maybe 3 months, 6 months, something like that. But like that would actually bring about a lot of change in the entire ecosystem, not just in the startups ecosystem, but even in the healthcare ecosystem. Because like if you ignore such diseases like breast cancer, and if you wait for it for the last stage, like stage 3 and stage 4, then it becomes a huge burden on the families, on the hospitals, on the entire economy as well. So it's really important to try to support such young and frugal innovations. So this is a slide on frugal innovation. So if you talk about like the best of solutions that actually work in these villages or the rural areas of the developing countries, they are the solutions that focus on one core problem. You don't have to have like so many solutions for so many things. You just have to focus on one small little problem and work on a solution for that problem, because it's really important to focus on that unmet clinical need which is there, and that's how you'll actually get the customers, get people to use it, get the right kind of adoption as well. So with that, I'd like to end this presentation, that learning never exhausts the mind. If you put your mind to something, and then there's nothing that can actually stop you. I was listening to the previous panel about like productivity and time management. I think like there were some very good skills that were shared there. I would ask everybody to actually focus on those, because like that actually brings you a lot of change in your lives. For example, these days in days of lockdown, like you don't have to commute to your workplace, and also you can actually manage your time in a much more efficient way. For example, like plan your calendar in a way that you can actually put in exercise blocks for exercise in the morning or in the evening, maybe with your kids, maybe with your husband or the family, because like these are, I think like we are living in times in which like efficiency has actually grown up a little bit, because you don't have to commute, you don't have like a lot of things that are uncertain, because you know like this is when your day starts, this is when your day ends, these are the things that you have planned out in the day. You don't have to think about how much time will be lost in traffic or in the travel and all of that. So I think like we should all focus on this, and especially in this month of October, you should try to focus on your own health and see whatever you can do for your own health, for your family's health. And also like if it's a time to give back to the society as well, because there's so many people who are facing these kind of issues in the villages, and it's really important to find out like one cause that you would really want to support and go for it.
Thank you, Dr. Rochi. This is really insightful, and I can relate your talks because Berkeley Healthcare is specialized in minimum invasive surgery, and we have a very nice robotic surgeon on board. And hopefully, very soon, we are going to have a full show on women healthcare, where we are going to introduce this robotics, and I would definitely would love to have you and one more time, and you can share more insights about it. And I want to thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to see you more and more in our next shows.
Thank you so much, Mr. Musa. Thank you.